Welcome back. In the last video, we cover overfitting problems with decision tree for both in the settings of regression and also in the settings of classification. In this lesson, we're going to go and look at where do we go from here. Now, the one thing that we did talk about before was that decision trees are under the supervised learning space, and it works for both classification as well as regression. The beauty of decision tree really is that it's a white box. It's very easy to understand. We highlighted some of the advantages as well as disadvantages with it. There are a couple of things that really comes out of this is that decision tree is a great first port of call. What that means is that it's a great place to start your modeling your so-called data using decision tree. With that, you get a first cut, you get a first view, you get an appreciation of how your data, what it's like and whether the decision tree works well with it or not. And the other thing is that because decision tree split your data in sometimes binary, mostly binary, and a lot of times split into multiple classes, you can see where their so-called segregations come in. Of course, you can use different visualization tool for that, just that most people can read and understand the so-called if-then statement well. And decision tree are great for that. They're great in helping you to develop your intuition, and more importantly, when you actually communicate to management, you do need to actually communicate in some way that they can actually appreciate. Now, management are not technical people. They don't understand when we actually tell them, the linear regression coefficient is such and such, the MSE or the minimums, the sums of square errors is such and such, R squared is such and such. They're not going to be able to digest that or even make any head or tail all of it. You have to use intuition to actually communicate your findings to them, and decision tree is a great one for that. Having said all that, there are a couple of tips on practical use. Decision tree, I think by now you know that I already mentioned this many times. It tends to overfit on data with large number of features. You have to check the ratio of samples to number of features as well. Consider performing dimensionality reduction such as PCA beforehand before you feed it into the decision tree. Visualize your tree as you are training by using the export function, which we shown before. Use maximum depth of 3 as an initial tree depth and increase it as you go. Tune your minimum sample split or minimum samples leave to control the number of samples at a leave. Now, minimum samples leave is that if it doesn't have more than 20, you won't split, for example. And or the other way is minimum samples leave, meaning each leave must have a minimum number of samples. Balance your dataset before training to prevent the tree from being biased towards the classes that are dominant. And also the last two here is that these two is about how do you overcome bias class by sampling an equal number of samples from each class, and also by normalizing the sum of the sample weights for each class to the same value. Now, the last thing is where do you go from here? I've prepared a couple of references here for you to actually look at. Let me just copy and paste that across. Some of these are really good. Obviously, Wikipedia is the common one. And there's also the Scikit-learn and a few other pretty well written and a few textbooks too for you to actually to move on from there. Of course, what we've done so far is just really fairly at the elementary to intermediate level. If you want to actually dig into it a little bit more into depth, I would suggest you look at Quinlan, who is really the creator of the C3 and C4.5 algorithm, and you can of course develop further as well. I think I've given this link for the Hasty, Tipshirani, and also Friedman's text on elements of statistical learning. With that, I'm gonna wrap this lesson up, and thank you for watching. I hope you found this section on decision tree been useful. and I hope that you have now one more arrows in your bow to solve real world problem and can tackle them using the arsenals that you have built up so far. In the next segment, we're going to go into random forest. We're going to talk about bagging and also boasting, and that's really, as I mentioned before, these are built upon decision tree, and we will look into that in the next section. Thank you for watching and paying attention. I look forward to seeing you in the future lessons.